Hi, I'm John Harrison. Now, as you probably know, Russia hosted the World Cup this year. 32 teams came here from all over the world, and millions of football supporters and tourists came here to see what was going on. And how did Moscow welcome the fans? That's what we're going to be talking about in this program. It was such a beautiful event. It was as if Moscow was having a carnival every day. The streets were actually full of football fans. Among them, Mexicans, Brazilians and Argentinians stood out. The World Cup transformed the city and gave it a special charm. Nikolskaya became the main street of the championship. On some competition days, the street was absolutely packed with people celebrating. Even people not at all into sports got infected with football fever. Even after the championship had already started, they tried to go out and buy tickets, preferably to the main arena, Luzhniki, where the opening ceremony took place. The championship was memorable for the remarkable performance of the Russian national team, which at the very beginning defeated Saudi Arabia with a score of 5-0 and continued its winning streak right on up to the quarterfinals. For the first time since 1970, Russia reached the quarterfinals by beating one of the strongest teams in the world, the team from Spain. The Russians conceded only to the Croatians, but not without putting up a good fight. The opposing team was able to grind out a victory only during the final penalty series. Then, both local fans and foreign guests showed their support for the Russian team. Fans carefully got ready for each match. For example, before the Iceland-Argentina game, several thousand Scandinavian fans held a cheering rehearsal right in Zaradia Park. Fortunately, the park was able to easily accommodate such a huge number of international guests. Let's talk to Pavel Trichleb, director of Zaradia Park.
According to Yandex, Zaradia Park was the most popular search query among international guests visiting Moscow for the World Cup. And I must say that it was sort of a test for Zaradia Park, because those 1.5 million visitors in July, during the championship, it was actually a record month for the park, and we welcomed almost 500,000 foreign fans here at Zaradia.
Special fan zones were created throughout the city. There, everyone could watch a game on a big screen. Almost every day, pop stars were giving concerts there. Just like during the Sochi Winter Olympics, every fan visiting Moscow for the World Cup received a so-called fan ID. It allowed them to enter the country without a visa, use public transport free of charge, and visit museums and restaurants. The idea of fan IDs proved itself so well that the Qatari government has decided to use it during the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Numerous volunteers helped foreign guests find their way around the Russian capital. They were always ready to help, to tell everything about local points of interest or to show them the way to the stadium. By the start of the international competition, 400 English-speaking attendants were there to help guests in the Moscow metro. International fans were amazed by the high level of organization, as well as the high level of cleanliness of the city. They all said that Moscow had prepared perfectly for the World Cup, and they openly declared their love for Russia. During those days, many foreigners actually rediscovered Russia for themselves, and some of them have literally fallen in love with the place. People bought Russian flags or t-shirts with the Russian tricolour on them, and some even painted Russian national symbols on their faces or bodies. Let's see what Sergei Kukhinidze, editor-in-chief of Capital Ideas magazine, has to say about this.
Имидж Москвы очень меняется.
Moscow's image is changing. The FIFA World Cup was a perfect example of this. It opened the eyes to people coming from both East and West to what Russia really is. People were simply amazed. We sometimes joke that for many foreigners, Moscow is a very gloomy place where bears are walking down the streets. But this stereotype is actually not so far from the truth. People from both East to West know very little about Russia and about Moscow. There are lots of stereotypes out there.
According to experts, the money spent on the World Cup was one of the most profitable investments in Moscow's history. The Russian capital alone was visited by 4.5 million fans, half of them from abroad. Fans coming from some countries were afraid of possible fights with local fans, which often happen during major football competitions. But there was not even one single incident. According to FIFA President Gianni Infantino, this championship was the best in World Cup history and it will have a beneficial effect on the future development of football in the country. Russian President Vladimir Putin also noted that Moscow and all of Russia can be proud of the results of the competition. 2018 was a very successful year for Moscow's hospitality industry. Inbound tourism increased by almost 10%. Now we're going to talk to Nikolai Gulyaev, the head of sports and tourism department of the Moscow government. Nikolai Alexeyevich, my first question is, the World Cup's over now, the great euphoria of the games is finished. Is there anything left of that in Moscow now?
It's great that such an event took place in Moscow, and for one entire month, Moscow became the center of this amazing celebration of football, an unofficial capital of football, so to speak. And this was not because Moscow is the capital of our country, but rather because 12 games were played here, including the opening game and, of course, the final game at Luzhniki Stadium. And of course, because of its location, Moscow was the main transport hub of the championship. And most guests coming to the country arrived in Moscow and then went on to other cities for the World Cup. We raised the bar pretty high in terms of hospitality, organization, and everything else related to welcoming guests to our city, including foreign visitors. And there were a lot of them during the World Cup. Guests who have continued coming here even after the championship, and their number has increased significantly. They're eager to see what Russia and Moscow have to offer. It's all because we shattered the world image of Russia, and Moscow in particular, as a bad and dangerous place, and put a dent in those stereotypes about bears and terrible streets. So people who came to Moscow from highly developed countries were more than surprised by the city's infrastructure and the openness and warm-heartedness of its residents.
И самое главное, душевностью и открытостью самих горожан.
And apart from pleasant memories, what else has Moscow gained from the World Cup?
Москва несколько уникальный в этом случае.
Moscow is somewhat unique compared to the other 10 World Cup cities,
другим 10 городам, а вот вся
in the sense that its entire infrastructure
была
was created according to a master plan
порядке и исходя из государственных программ
and government programs for the development of the city, which had been thought up many years ago. But when Moscow was chosen to host the FIFA World Cup, just as Sochi was chosen to host the Winter Olympics before that, the primary goal for all the people involved in the preparations was not merely to impress everyone, but to hold these events at the highest possible levels. As a participant of many Olympic Games, both as an athlete and a spectator, I can say with confidence that there have been no other Winter Olympics like the ones held in Sochi, or any World Cups like the one held in Moscow.
What plans does the department have for this winter season?
Скоро будут открыты
New ice skating rinks and ski tracks will open soon. We have many events planned for this coming winter season, and we'll be happy to welcome both Muscovites and guests of the Russian capital, and families, and sports enthusiasts at the sports facilities and courts we've created for them.
A lot of foreigners come here and they decide to stay here for a long time, some forever. They kind of fall in love with the place. It's a big city, a modern city. It combines innovation and tradition. Locals say that it's a city of possibilities. Now, what do foreigners think about all this? Let's find out. It's like magic. The audience can't believe their ears. The legendary American MMA fighter Jeff Monson steps into the ring to the sounds of the Russian national anthem. People who've come to see the snowman, as they call him, fight the Sambo champion Denis Khomkin rise from their seats. Out there in the audience is Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Jeff the Snowman Monson!
Even a broken leg couldn't keep the snowman from winning. Jeff has repeatedly declared his love for Russia. It's impossible to confuse him with other fighters. His body is covered in numerous tattoos. Among them are portraits of Engels, Lenin and Marx. After a trip to Volgograd, he got another one, an image of the Motherland Calls monument, and he always speaks with great warmth about Russia. 2016, it seems that back then no one would have guessed that the whole country would be talking about that. He would decide to move away and start learning Russian. Then he received Russian citizenship. He would star in music videos and commercials, and then he would once again decide to radically change his career. Former child psychologist turned MMA celebrity Jeff Monson would become a member of the Russian parliament, a representative of the people of Krasnogorsk, where he lives today. Next year, Mr. Monson plans to finish his fighting career and start coaching children. Those kids are students of Brooks International Private School, which has recently opened in Moscow. What do they dream of while carelessly chasing the ball across a football field? Maybe some of them will aspire to become famous athletes like Jeff Monson. Students of this school have everything to help them fulfill their athletic potential: a gym and a football field right on the roof of the school building. And not only children from Russia attend this school, there are many exchange students here as well, and they have every chance to build a life here in Moscow or in any other city around the world. But why would they need to go anywhere else? Those who come to Moscow to find new opportunities and stay here for the rest of their lives are confident that there's no other city like Moscow. Coach and teacher Michael Moore, who has trained his students for competitions between English-speaking schools, made his choice long ago. He moved from Ireland to Russia, even though he could have gone to any other European country. Michael loves football and is a big fan of Lokomotiv.
Russia's always been of interest to me. It's just such an amazing country, and Moscow is such an amazing city. So I think the reason that we wanted to come to Russia or Moscow is because it can offer so many different opportunities, especially for sport and physical education.
Head of lower school and early years foundation stage Mark Broom prefers swimming to football. Though recently it's been getting increasingly difficult for him to find time to go to the pool or to read fairy tales to children at the school library. He has his hands full all the time now. After all, Mr. Broom is one of the school's founders. He had to put in a lot of effort to open up this school. Mark's been living in Moscow for the past 7 years, and he plans on staying here. He's confident that Moscow provides great opportunities for natives and newcomers alike. It's a city where major deals are taking place every day, and a place that provides favourable conditions for investments or starting a business.
In my position now as head of early years and lower school here at Brooks Moscow, starting a school of a capacity of 800 children from scratch has been a wonderful opportunity for me, and for anyone in the teaching profession, it's very rare to have this opportunity.
So how did you like the sporting side of Moscow? Perhaps your opinion about this city might have changed just a little bit. I'm John Harrison. See you next time.